All right, we have more changes unfolding in the U.S. economy and over at the Federal Reserve. Changes that have Fed officials now apparently realizing they have a problem, scratching their heads after looking at recent unemployment and wage numbers. Are the job numbers what they appear to be? Well, something's changed, or some new data maybe was presented to these Fed members as they just shifted their position, said something that we've never heard them say before, and said it over and over and over again last week. So what happened? What's different all of a sudden? Well, we're going to look at that. We'll look at what's happening, what they're concerned about, what they're now saying, and what it means for rates in the near future. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. Also, if you're a business owner or a sales manager looking to automate your sales process and organize your business, check out Snapforce CRM, my company. One app to manage your customers, your deals, track your sales, run reports, sync all client communication into a central database. You can even send emails, text messages automatically, and much more. If you're unhappy with your CRM, give our product a try with our 14-day free trial or schedule a free demo, a free demonstration with one of our representatives. So we have a problem. The Fed has a problem. Something that's been a concern for the last year was what happens if the Fed doesn't cut rates soon enough. What would be the first thing to break? Would it be the labor market or credit market, something in the credit market? Labor market always seemed more likely to me as it's fickle. Once unemployment starts rising, it can shoot up quickly and fast. There's also no easy fix. The Fed can't just cut rates to solve the problem. They can try, but it won't fix it overnight. It could take years to rein back in the damage that they cause. Now, I've been surprised just how sustainable the economy's been thus far. It's been almost 2 years of Fed tightening, the quickest and highest rise in interest rates ever. Mortgage rates more than double where they were 2 years ago. The worst housing market since the great financial crisis, and commercial lending, forget about it, slowed to a trickle. Banks no longer writing new corporate loans, folks. Very difficult for a business, a small business, to find capital today. Completely different environment than it was 2 years ago. Yet somehow unemployment has barely budged. Only at 3.9% now. So what the hell is up with that? Well, that's according to the government data, right? The BLS data, which there's a lot to be said about, but let's, just skip that for a minute. Instead, even if we use the BLS's data, the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the official data that the Fed goes off of, we can still see how they've managed to pull all of this off. It's not because people aren't hurting. No, it's the opposite. Hourly workers, the largest chunk of employed Americans, they're still employed, yes, but their employment situation has changed, moving from a full-time job, one full-time job, to 2 part-time jobs, maybe even 3 part-time jobs. In fact, all the job growth, all of it over the last year, all of it has been from new part-time jobs, which you could see has been surging as of late. People are losing their full-time positions, or their employers are cutting the hours so they aren't full-time anymore, as full-time workers are entitled to additional benefits. Moving them from just 40 hours to 32 hours makes a major difference to the company's bottom line. That's what we're seeing here. And the biggest, most consequential policy under this administration, and the only thing that saved Jerome Powell and the Fed thus far, you guessed it, immigration. This isn't a joke. We have the numbers. Immigration is at such monumental levels these past 3 years that it single-handedly saved the labor market, propped up the labor market. Labor market participation was at a crawl a few years ago coming out of the pandemic. Companies couldn't find enough workers. Well, what changed? The Biden administration changed the laws for illegal migrants. If they claim asylum, instead of just crossing illegally, they can now work legally. Huge difference. In the past, all the illegal immigration we saw would have these migrants working under the table, in the shadows. Well, the 10 plus million new migrants in the last 3 years, many of them, they're able to take advantage of this asylum loophole, which means when these new payroll numbers are released, guess what happens? Look at this. The February 2024 last month's jobs report recorded an all-time record 1.2 million foreign-born workers, i.e. immigrants. This includes obviously both legal and illegal, but in February it was mostly illegal. And if you think the Fed's not aware of this, think again. Here's a note from HSBC from yesterday titled Immigration, the Near-Term Labor Force Growth and Wage Effects. They write this: without immigration, the growth rate of the U.S. labor force in 2023 would have been only 0.7%, but thanks to 5% growth in the foreign-born population, it was more than double that at 1.5%. As the Fed knows, this higher labor supply is an important part of the labor market rebalancing needed to bring inflation sustainably back down to 2%, unquote. They're all in on it, folks. This is the policy. This is the actual policy. The southern border, the crisis at the border, why they haven't stopped it when the president could with one executive order. Well, here's a reason for you. And said another way, just to drive this point home, especially if you think that 10 million people, 10 million new people from wherever they come from, crossing the border in 3 years doesn't matter, because a lot of people say that. It doesn't matter. It's just a drop in the bucket. So what? Well, you're wrong. Take a look at this. This is showing all job growth in the U.S. economy. Look carefully what happened in 2021. All, let me repeat that, all job creation in this country in the past 3 years has been exclusively for immigrants, for foreign-born workers. Zero job creation, zero for native-born workers since May 2018. If you still think an open border and 4 million new people a year doesn't matter, think again. It affects everything, folks. Housing affordability, housing availability. It's already slim pickings out there, a massive housing shortage or active listing shortage in this country. Well, adding 10 million new people doesn't help the equation at all. So that's the only reason why the unemployment rate is still under 4%, currently sitting at 3.9%. But the Fed's got an even bigger problem. Even though financial conditions are much looser technically now than they were last year, rates are still high, credit is still hard to find, and a default cycle has started. The longer rates stay elevated, the higher chance labor breaks. We heard Jerome Powell say this last week. Other Fed members as well have been hinting all of a sudden that something changed in the incoming data. For example, for the first time in the last 2 years, Jerome Powell said this in his opening statement last week. Watch this.
The labor market remains relatively tight, but supply and demand conditions continue to come into better balance. Over the past 3 months, payroll job gains averaged 265,000 jobs per month. The unemployment rate has edged up but remains low at 3.9%. Strong job creation has been accompanied by an increase in the supply of workers, reflecting increases in participation among individuals aged 25 to 54 years, and a continued strong pace of immigration. Gained greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably down toward 2%. Of course, we're committed to both sides of our dual mandate, and an unexpected weakening in the labor market could also warrant a policy response. We will continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting.
Again, this is new. Openly saying that they would cut rates to head off a job-cutting spiral at the expense of higher inflation. The Fed's mandate is twofold, right? To keep inflation around 2% and to maximize employment. There's a balance here. And something shifted for them to now be considering this. Responding to a question by a reporter, Powell said that they are cognizant of the risk that layoffs could lead to, quote, fairly quick increases in unemployment, that they're watching the level of jobless claims. But again, we looked at jobless claims in the beginning of the video, how workers are losing jobs but replacing them with part-time jobs. And even if you look at pure jobless claims, some states appear to already be in trouble. The states in yellow on this map, for instance, have seen a sharp enough increase in unemployment recently to trigger the SOM rule, which identifies the start of a recession, or tries to. It uses the 3-month moving average of the unemployment rate in that area, in this state, for example. If it rises by a half point or more off its 12-month low, then it triggers it. This doesn't mean they've fallen into recession. It's just an indicator. tries to catch and identify the start of a recession. Bottom line, though, Fed's got problems. They aren't planning to cut rates until late this year, even though the federal government, the executive branch, is pressuring them to do so. Treasury also is in the process of scheduling the auctions to borrow another $1.2 trillion after Congress just passed that massive spending package last week. All that borrowing will be done, remember, at these higher rates. Not to mention, the Biden administration wants to see rates fall before the election. Surprisingly, Jerome Powell's held strong so far. Hopefully he can continue to do so. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.